Howdy, y'all. While we wait for our fearless leader to join us, I've dropped a link to the agenda notes in the chat. Please sign in and let us know you're here.
Thank you so much.
How you feeling there, David, my friend?
Lousy, but better.
That's the same as it was yesterday.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Sorry I'm a touch late. It is challenging to get back to work after vacation. Almost as hard as working while you feel lousy. All right, what are we talking about today, friends? First off, do we have any new friends that wanted to introduce themselves to the group?
Hey, I'll go. Vicky knows me. So Brian Eugenito, I'm from Morgan Stanley. I kind of represent our OSPO amongst other things, and I'm on the governing board of Finos. I thought this working group was a good fit for me, so decided to join.
Well, welcome. Glad to have you. Any other new friends wanted to say hello?
I'll say hi. I'm Brian Russell. I'm on Google's open source security team. I work with a few other folks and a couple of other different working groups, but it's my first time attending this one, and really just wanted to see exactly what the group is targeting and the kinds of things that are on your radar right now.
Excellent. Well, welcome both Brians. Do we have another Brian that wants to say hello? All right, moving along. Can I have someone offer assistance in scribing and taking notes for our meeting today? Please.
I will do my darndest.
I will also do my darndest.
Excellent. Thank you both. Really appreciate it. Is the attendee list taken from somewhere? Regular participants listed. So the meeting attendants, Avishai, are listed in the bottom in the template of this document. I periodically, when I have time and when I think about it, add folks that have become more regular attendees, that is a low priority task for me. So I will try to be more up to date in keeping track of our current frequent offenders, so to speak, that come in and help us out. And but ultimately, at the end of the year, I will put out a list of and say that, hey, Vicky showed up to 24 of our 26 meetings, so I will add her as part of our regular cast of characters. So then weekly, as folks come in and out, we'll adjust the list. But it's kind of manual work right now because it's a Google document.
Quick question.
Alrighty.
What does it mean to be grayed out?
That means that you showed up often enough to make the template, but you're not here today.
Oh, but I'm not showing up often enough to reach the template, but I am here today.
That's right. Yeah, and I'll go back and I will curate the list, but in the great scale of things, in the 12 hours I donate to the OpenSSF, this doesn't always make that list.
Yeah, I see. Okay, cool.
But if anyone shows up often enough that they want to be on the regular list and be grayed out at the start of the call, please add yourself to the template. I have no boggle with that.
Cool, thanks.
Alrighty. Do we have anyone with opens today they wanted to talk about? If not, we will do a quick update of our, And our bullets are all messed up again. Urgh.
This
We'll do a quick
document is a
overview.
pain in the ass.
It
It looks
is.
like somebody did add some opens. It's just difficult to see.
Great, just give me a second and we'll talk about that open. We will talk about the opens. We will do a quick call for any of our member projects that have updates they want to share with the team. And then we will go look at David's one-page document and the one page for developing software. And then we will hopefully get that wrapped up and then work on to the evaluating open source software, which the last call, the team had a lot of feels on. So let me find the open. Open. Basically, writing those comments. Yes, we will address those two documents shortly. Are there any other opens we wanted to address before we jump into sub-project updates?
I would like to have a small point. Yeah.
Please.
As some of you remember, I'm leading the OpenSSF office hours, and I've sent the doodle to come with first dates, and for now I just have 2 answers for availabilities. Yeah, not too many to start. So I'm wondering, it may be because of vacation, because many places people are on vacation or on conferences or somewhere else. So what I'm thinking about is postponing the first sessions to September, actually, when people should be back. And I wanted to hear your opinion and the other group opinion about what you think about postponing to September.
So to provide context for everyone, the foundation is providing some office hours for maintainers and projects to come in, kind of an ask us anything expert hour. And Marta is, I guess, heading that up. Awesome. I saw your note. I haven't had a chance to respond. So I will channel my friend Arnaud. I think August isn't a great time to have anything where we're going to get a lot of participation, and I would vote for postponing the expert hour until September. That would be my vote. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, definitely agree with that. You should postpone. In Europe, August is really not a good time to plan anything.
I second that.
So I think your feedback from this group, Marta, would be postpone. And you were doing like a doodle or something or some kind of sign up thing.
I'm going to change the doodle to include September dates, basically. I moved to September and we resend it of the dates. Thanks for the feedback. That's what I was thinking. It's the right thing to do.
If you could post those links when you get them in this document, I will commit to going and clicking it and signing up to help out where I can.
Okay, noted.
With the 2 things I know. And I would encourage everyone else to sign up as well. All right, any other opens before we move on to project updates? All righty. Mr. Wheeler has been a little under the weather, so no updates on the best practices badge. Oh, do you want to talk about your Dolly 2 though, David?
Sure, why not? I told people earlier, hey, it'd be cool to add some, images, something to help people understand the idea, and we've actually added one. It's a little race cars picture to give an idea about the race conditions. So haven't had a chance to do more, but at least we can now say, hey, that's pretty cool. So we can go from there.
Awesome. That might be something we leverage as part of the education SIG as we are creating new materials.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So I see the SKF folks have added some updates. So Ricardo or Glenn, do you want to chat about what's going on in SKF world?
Yeah, sure. So we are starting to implement our new UX. I think Glenn probably showed the slides for the whole training platform. Yeah, awesome. So first we found somebody who wanted to integrate the UX in the front end, but sadly he dropped the project. So we had to find somebody else. We found somebody else, luckily. So I got him going, and well, he's working on that now. So I'm also really excited for that, because that well, really gets this is a front end developed by back end developers edge off. So that's really good. So we got that going on. We're also investigating to add the automation framework from SAP to the HackOS labs, you know, the Apache Guacamole thing where we have the code review labs. Because what we did now is we have like a Python script that directly communicates with the SAP API with all the different steps that you need to take with running the SAS scripts and setting up the rules engine and doing the scanning and whatnot. And the automation framework seems like an easier way to do that, because then you can just simply define all those steps in YAML. So that's really interesting. So we're also really looking into that, well, to keep the maintenance of the automation more easy. And we're looking into adding code review labs to the HackOS, because the fun thing with the HackOS is we already have like the environment where you have Sublime, you can read the code, we can install the tooling. And what I find is we really want to make some practical stuff about secure code reviewing, so that you can also run stuff like SamGraph, but also run stuff like SonarQube for psychometric complexity, and you know, really the tools that you would need to deep dive into doing code reviews and finding vulnerabilities. So we're kind of also now in the mix of looking into, well, repositories that we know that have known vulnerabilities, which give really interesting cases. And then we can implement them in the HackOS, and you can, well, start doing the code review and learning more hands-on way without, you know, because mostly when you have like code review labs, you have small snippets, and then it's fairly straightforward what type of vulnerability it is and where to look for. And we really want to one-up this to make it a bit more complicated, but also teach the methodology and give the tools and whatnot. So we're also, well, looking to add that to the HackOS.
That's awesome.
Yep.
For those of you that don't know, so this group, we have our edX courses, our secure coding fundamentals classes that David and others help put together. So that's one avenue we're providing education and best practice information for folks. SKF is another member project, and that's more of a hands-on tool where you go through and do labs and actually implement the ideas that the concepts you've learned. And I don't know if you've heard yet, Ricardo, but SKF features pretty prominently as some of our strategies for addressing the education part of the mobilization plan. So those of you who don't know, we have an education SIG where we're focusing in on actually providing training for people and classes and certifications. And SKF will be part of our strategy, one of the different techniques we will be providing education for. So we're going to try to get some additional augmentation of the SKF project and hopefully some additional participants for you all.
Oh, awesome. That's really cool to hear, man. Nice.
Yeah, we're really excited. It's trying to
same.
approach training in multiple different, because people learn differently.
Yeah,
Some people learn by reading, some people learn by doing, and we're trying to provide all those avenues.
Oh, that's really awesome. Cool. Nice.
Yeah. Any comments from Ricardo? The SKF team's doing some really great work. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'll put a plug in for Spiros. He is the CRE team is looking for some assistance in crafting standards. So if anyone has knowledge of standards like NIST 853 or PCI, DSS, these types of things, if you have experience working with these different security frameworks, the CRE team would love your help and contributions, helping them automate some of that. So please reach out to Spiros either in our Slack or through our mailing list. He actually put a request in, I think, a couple weeks back. for some assistance. I see that scorecard folks have an update. Azim, do you want to just give us a brief update on what scorecard's going on?
Yeah, sure. So we have a new beta version of scorecard action that we have released. So with this new version, we have the scorecard badges that can be enabled. And also we'll have a scorecard API. So basically it's a REST API where you can look at your per commit data. So it's a beta release that we've done, and we are rolling out to early adopters. So if you want to try it out, would very much appreciate the feedback here.
That's awesome. I might also ask you, send a note out to our mailing list so we get a little bit broader exposure and hopefully get you some more beta testers.
Sounds good. I'll do that.
Excellent. All right. Let us move on to the existing guidelines for developers one pager. I lost the thing. There we go. If I can turn your attention to that document, let's see if we can get this project put to bed and get it published out in our Git repo. So David, where do you think we are in regards to this, the one pager? Are we happy with it?
So I think that we're in good shape for the one pager for the
No, that's the wrong one. I'm sorry.
okay, yeah, let's see here. Let me just, it's in the notes.
I grabbed the
post it in
wrong one.
chat.
My bad. There you go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the one page guide for developing more secure software, I think we're in pretty good shape. The only thing that's been changed relatively recently is the addition of one more thing, the safe code document. Lots of folks have referred to it, so I don't think that's going to be controversial. Tried to tweak up the continuously improved point more to try to make it short, trying to keep that one page. And otherwise, I think this one's in decent shape. I mean, I think if people were expecting us to coordinate and make everything around the world all consistent, we're not trying to do that. We're just trying to point to the materials that are already there that, hey, help me get started here. Here's some material to help you get started. The other one, the quick guide for evaluating, which is kind of, in my mind, is kind of a companion piece.
If we can pause for a
oh,
second, David.
sure.
Eric has a question and Marta has some feedback for you as well. So Eric, why don't you go first?
Please. Yeah.
Mine is more feedback, I think. There are a few things I kind of commented on the document, but one of the things I note is that the order, maybe we could consider reordering some of it to be more top down. For an example, you have the best practices badge is number 4. A number of these items are required to actually be eligible for the best practice badge. So while I understand this isn't, a document that's trying to help them get there, if they're reading this from the top down, if they've addressed everything in the document by the time they get to that, well, then they'll understand it a little bit better.
Yeah, that was actually very much not the intent of the ordering. The ordering was very much the, hey, what should I work on next? And the theory, at least when I was trying to do the order, was, if something was a quick win, get you started, go, put that early. And the badge, you're right, it does sweep up a number of the other things, but they can start much earlier and get a lot of quick wins without that. But we could move it around, absolutely. So I think one challenge is it may be very hard for us to agree on an order.
Yeah, and that's fine. I mean, I just, and again, it's all going to be up for individual judgment, but, things like, combination of tools for CI monitoring, don't push secrets to repository. I think all those things are key developer activities that should come first, but again, to your point, we could argue that all day. So it's just a consideration, something to think
Right,
about.
right. No, and I think that I do worry that there's probably not going to be a single order everyone accepts. But on the other hand, if folks want to reorder it around, that's awesome. I'm certainly not, you know, if there's a better order. I'm not sure how to work out a better order as a group, to be honest. If anybody has suggestions on that approach, that'd be good and useful.
Marta, do you want to share your feedback?
In fact, I will put that feedback in comments in the document because I gave the document to a group of developers and they went through, they had a lot of comments and I need to summarize.
Okay.
Yeah, I did the same thing. My team has
Yeah.
also been doing that.
Okay. First of all, thank you to both of your teams. Really appreciate that. And to the earlier comment about ordering, I think that is very much worth bringing up. I guess I'd ask the question back: how do we deal with that? Because for specific comments on specific points, that's pretty easy to. Well, if it's on a particular point, we can add as a comment or suggestion. That's not so bad. Reordering for multiple people, I'm not sure how to handle that feedback. We earlier had just put at the bottom, but if people said move 3 to 2, as soon as you did one of them, then everybody else's comments got confusing. So I do very much. I do think that reordering is a good idea, but the problem then is how do we get that feedback in a helpful way so that we can get the wisdom of the crowd here.
I would suggest that we add a comment section below item 23 that will not be published. If somebody has a cohesive thought about how to reorder things, we will consider that. But I would like to not piece, because we'll spend now until 2025 debating moving 22 to 14 and
Right.
11 to 2. So I would like to try to see if we can get this out the door, at least initially, to get some wider review. Let's take Eric and Marta's team's feedback and see if we need to make any changes before we publish. But if anyone has a thought about how we might, a proposal on how we could order this, if there was methodology or phases or however they thought might be better, please put that proposal under the comments below number 23. And we will, maybe by next meeting, we'll be able to digest Marta and Eric's team's feedback to see if we need to make any substantive changes. But I would like to try to get this published in August, to at least get the first draft out into our Git repo and start talking about it and getting additional feedback from maintainers. Mr. Rousseau.
So yeah, you kind of stole a little bit of my thunder there, which is fine. I know. I think first thing, we need to draw a line in the sand here, and I think end of August is a good goal to have this in the Git. We can always update it and make changes as necessary. We've been kind of churning on this, I think, for a little while. So my suggestion would be that, I guess exactly what you said. Let's get the final round of comments in here from Eric and Marta. Anybody else has anything, and let's call that the final round of comments. We'll go through one last review, and the content will then be done. We can then weigh the option of maybe moving some stuff around based on Krobe's suggestion. I think is a good one. But then let's plan to have this in the Git by the end of this month. I think we have a couple meetings between now and then to get through those couple tasks. But perfection is the enemy of good enough.
Exactly. I think we want to get this useful content out, try to get some, some actual people implementing it to get their feedback. Any other thoughts on the matter? All right, so please, if you have reordering or organization feedback, provide that in the comments. And now let's move on to what I feel is going to be a very spirited conversation around the guide for evaluating open source software. And I will turn it back over to David, who's starting up his preamble about it.
Preamble. This is not a constitution. Okay, so I I wasn't able to participate in the last spirited discussion. I understand there was a spirited discussion. I'm grateful for it. Actually, let me repost the link to the guide to evaluating. In many ways, this is a comparison document. It's not as far along, but I think most folks would agree that both of these tasks are important. So the quick guide to evaluating open source software has a list. I know that there's been some discussions about ways to improve this. I guess maybe I should just open it up for questions. So how do we how can we best get this wrapped up so it can also get released? Ideally, these two will be released at the same time, but they may not be. That may not be a reasonable staging.
And to summarize the feedback from the last time we met, while you were convalescing, the group thought that this was less structured and organized. It was a nice list of thoughts, but they thought we might want to we need to add some more meat to it. So, for example, should it be added at all? May not resonate with a developer if somebody's trying just gets this list. So we may want to think about how we want to, do we want to use the question motif as we're evaluating software? And if so, we might want to, we'll probably need to add some additional context or links or reasoning, why are we asking somebody to question this? I think with some of the initial thoughts. But I would definitely, if anyone else in the group had thoughts on it.
Yeah. The reason for the questions was because the hope was to guide them to answers, but of course, if the question doesn't help them enough, for that one specifically, I see the point. Maybe it should be, can we avoid adding it at all? For example,
maybe we need to put some more context in the first paragraph and say, this document is a series of questions development teams or developers should ask as they are considering using open source software, for example.
So can we avoid adding it at all? If we rephrased, let's use that first one as an exemplar. Can we avoid adding it at all? Would that help address some of that?
Well, and then, is there, we have a lot of links to some useful tools and resources. So is there a good blog or a tool that might help the developer act on that question? Or
that one's hard for tooling, but I mean, frankly, searches are the searching. If the issue is can you use your existing dependencies, basically asks you to search your existing dependencies. I'm sure
is anyone aware of guidance that talks about why it is important to not include unused software or old software or not updated software? That would be
later, but yeah, I'm not sure that we need
like if you don't need it, don't use it.
Yeah,
if you don't need it, don't include it.
Well, presumably they're thinking about adding something because they need some functionality. So this one is much more about trying to avoid adding new dependencies, but instead reusing what you already have.
There's a principle around not including software you don't need. I can't recall what it is off the top of my head. Randall, do you have a question or statement?
I think that's called controlling your attack surface or your attack vector. And I think that's what they're getting at. To consider like how the more packages you have, the bigger surface area you have for attack. So I think that's what they're getting at more than anything.
Yeah.
Maybe making that clearer that that's what we're talking about, not talking about like, do you really need this software? Because that's kind of an open-ended question.
Right. Well, that's what I was trying to. I was suggesting maybe rephrase the question to, can we avoid adding it all, using existing dependency instead?
How can we reduce our attack surface?
Yeah. So since every new dependency increases the number of dependency, the attack surface through dependencies.
Yeah.
So is number one clearer to folks? Do we understand what we're trying for? Do we like how that is coming together? I think it's great.
Ah.
Yeah, I think it looks good.
Okay.
All right. And as a group, are we okay with this questioning methodology as this artifact? I got a head nod from Kara.
I think it also really depends what community you come from, to be honest with you, as far as, because I think like a lot of communities like JS does not really tell you to think about what you install. So you end up with like 700 dependencies pretty easily. And that's not a problem for JS because they encourage that. So Fuzzy's a JS developer, so he could tell it.
Well, it's a problem for JS, but the problem is that they don't realize it's a problem.
Hi guys, I think Randall threw me under the bus there. Pleasure to have you. Thank you very much for having me. What do you call it? No, it's the thing is, right? It's like what I keep saying to Randall in our conversations in private is that a lot of the JS community are predominantly unaware of the associated risks that come from having multiple chains and their dependencies being untracked or unknown of what is, the three-door down effect, when it comes to like what else are these packages bringing along with it for the ride kind of thing. So, we kind of like have the long-standing joke that, node modules is probably the most heaviest object in the known universe. What node modules up the folder, but and dependency chain health can grow, but it's just one of those lack of awarenesses, and it's the way that JS is kind of structured. Everything is modular, so the more modular you make your projects and your packages, unfortunately, that number is only going to rise.
Right, but I think as worded, it can this can very much apply to Node as well. Hey, you brought in X, it brings in many other things. Maybe you don't. Maybe you can reuse what you've already brought in instead of bringing in yet another different module.
I totally agree. That kind of awareness, that kind of like education and sharing of institutional knowledge should be up there, especially when these things are being framed, especially for those kind of like ecosystems that are not particularly attuned to this kind of conversation or narrative.
And I added a comment that Dave just knacked. This would be potentially a really good blog idea for this working group to put together and put out through the foundation as kind of advocating that this is something communities need to be aware of, so that we can take that as an ancillary or parallel step to this document. We can maybe put together a list of things we think would be important for blogs and other educational venues.
Actually, that's a good point, and once this, it would be actually perfectly reasonable to have a little blog post overall summarizing, hey, here's something new we did, here's some of the points, and it could at least briefly explain in a little more detail a few, and then you could go back and have later blog posts dive in more detail if that seems appropriate.
And it's tangential to this, but several of us here on this call are involved in the education SIG, where we are putting together a proposal to increase developer awareness and training around secure coding principles and secure development. And we'll have a lot of different avenues for getting those ideas and materials out to developers. And potentially we might lean on this working group as a source of blogs. And I think this item in particular, maybe we can start putting something together and to help support that education effort. Yeah, Fuzzy. There's a group of us that are working on this problem. We'll meet tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern for the SIG, where we're working on the mobilization plan. And as I alluded to with SKF, that's one of our techniques. Another technique is blogs and webinars and training. And maybe we need to look at the secure fundamentals class or an advanced class we'll be developing and put something in there around dependency management and why it's important to think through this and reuse wherever possible and not add new.
I'd also like to add that this applies to containers, because the amount of times I've been surprised that people say, "Oh, Python 2's installed."
I'd be more surprised when it's not.
What was that damn kernel file, Dave?
Sorry.
There's back at Red Hat, every container contained this file, a supplementary file from the kernel, and that was included in every container. So every time there was a kernel update, every container was flagged as vulnerable, even though it was like a README file type thing.
Yeah, it was something stupid. I forget exactly which one it was, but you're 100% right.
People have sloppy container practices.
Amen. Yeah.
They actually have a good example on Swift about this. Like on Swift's repo, that's where I read that they have a thing about how people don't understand Python 2's installed and that has a bunch of issues, and Swift will flag them for you. So, but yeah, it's interesting because I'm throwing that in there.
Yeah. So it sounds like this is something very important we need to address in addition to our work here on this document.
I think especially the point Fuzzy made about chaining dependencies is very big, because I think that sometimes people forget that a lot of these packages come with other packages. So you do end up with thousands of packages, even though you were trying to install 5.
There's also the other thing with nodes. It's like not many people actually know how to utilize the package JSON properly, understand the difference, what a pure dependency is, what is the dependency, the relationship, what's brought through, what is needed in the project. It's like a lot of people do chain the actual developer dependencies into the dependencies graph itself.
You know what? That's a good point. Although I will say, I can't tell the number. I have filed endless reports upstream. Yeah, I'd love to use this, but your developer dependencies are the same as your runtime dependencies, and that's not right. And I've actually gotten some feedback where just that one comment and a couple tweaks, and my potential dependencies got reduced in half. That seems like more of a one-page guide for the developer, because really it's the developer of the thing you're thinking about depending on that minimize dependencies or something like that, or minimize runtime dependencies.
Maybe in the education SIG tomorrow we can discuss putting together a one page of how dependencies work, so maybe people understand how, because we can link back to that here, in terms of how dependent, how you can go about managing your dependencies, or how they actually work, and where how it all comes together. And if you don't understand what attack surface is, then you can go over there and understand what we mean by attack surface. Just an idea.
I think that's an excellent idea, Randall. And I'm adding it as a note right now for tomorrow.
Thank you, Rob.
All right. So what would we like to do with number one as it sits? Do we need to think about it some more? I guess, David, with this document, are we going to constrain ourselves to one page as well? Or do we
That
want
was
to
my
potentially
original
add some more context? Okay.
that was my original goal, but of course, this is, I don't view this as my document. You know, if making this 2 pages would make it more useful, I think the goal really is in the title. It's intended to be a quick guide. What we're trying not to do is make the 50-page report. If for no other reason than people won't read it. So, but if adding a little why and a little context would make it more useful, then hallelujah, let's do that. But I think shortness is a goal because otherwise people just won't use it.
I think we should try to capture the main ideas of everything. And if you don't understand what those necessarily mean, then I do think we should link to, because there's a lot of people in a lot of different starting places as far as what they understand about security, what they understand about their tooling, all of that type of stuff.
Yeah, adding a rationale in particular of why something, if it's not obvious. I mean, I don't think, is it easy to use securely? I don't think we need to explain that. But can we avoid adding it at all? If that's not clear to some, then yes, let's add an explanation. So maybe we can be a little more generous on this and make this 2 pages.
I'm thinking that maybe we can also put this in the wizard in SPF. And then if you, don't do certain stuff, then we can correlate controls or actionable items against them. So you also get an idea on what to do, right?
It's an excellent idea, Ricardo.
Yeah, most of these, at least I think, are more human as opposed to something a tool can do. Although a tool can at least remind you of things to look for.
But there's always that margin for human error or just not getting it done or forgetting something or something along those lines.
Sure. Hey, if we can use a tool, then great.
Yeah, if we, for the questions that we state, also can come up with some actionable items, I can, create some sort of a proof of concept on how that would fit into SKF.
That'd be
Very
great.
nice.
Ideally, if it's one of those things, if there was a unified field theory kind of situations, isn't it? If it was a way that we could actually, I've always thought about this when it came to known modules, is Sneak was probably the closest I came to it when it came to providing a package score, right? And told you whether or not, there's known vulnerabilities, etc., with this package, and how to, in the command line, the next steps to go about rectifying those issues. And normally it was just -- force, etc. But it's like those additional next steps. Those, what I keep saying, especially in the Astro community, the way that I got the support team going is that, if we're going to throw somebody underneath the bus, be prepared to pick them back up and dust them off afterwards. It's like, just, if you throw someone in the deep end, just jump in afterwards kind of situation, and design the tooling around that. It's like, if we're giving them this information, they're not going to be, a lot of problem with the tooling is that the information is presented in such a way that there's no cognitive way to differentiate what's been told, what's important, and how to action on that. You're effectively left with another mind dump that you have to then discern and spend extra time going over. So that's thank you.
That's a good point.
Indeed. So do we want to, I guess, homework for everybody, think about how we might be able to augment number one with some additional context or guidance, as Fuzzy says. Let's point out a problem and then provide some actionable paths that people can take to get out of that situation.
All right, a quick general question. This is, I think this is the right time to raise it, which is everyone okay with this scope? This is specifically for evaluating open source software. The other one really is more general for software at all. But a lot of the specific things we're talking about in this one is really more like open source software and being able to look at the commits, being able to look at the license. So I think this one, it's okay to focus on open source software specifically. Is anybody having any broad objections to that narrower scope?
No, we're in agreement.
Okay, all right, I'm going to remove that question, comment, whatever you want to call that again. Good, thank you. All right, and I had said this was intended to be one page, but it sounds like folks are agreeing that that's not really the critical thing here. So let me quickly add a comment. Want to keep this short.
We can always make it one page.
Well, yeah, not. Yeah, I'm fully aware of the margin games, 2-point fonts and so on, but that doesn't make it necessarily the best use of the time. It doesn't have to be one page. So let me I'm going to document that as a comment, and that way we'll know that that's where we're kind of shooting for.
Our goal is to be concise, but if we go a little over, that's fine.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about number 2 and kind of table number 1 for now, and maybe to have a little conversation about number 2 for our last 10 minutes together?
Yeah, that sounds good. I was gonna also say maybe we should also add like some of these do have ways of figuring out what you should check, but some of them don't. So.
Is it easy to use securely? And gee, that's hard, but hey, you know, the 2 points underneath it basically are the defaults. The interface is harder, but at least the default configuration sample examples are secure is reasonably enough. I saw some comments about, hey, is the interface secure? And I think the goal is it relatively easy to use securely? But that kind of repeats the initial question.
And do we have any suggestions on how a developer could determine this?
One that I would add is determine how the developers test their software. So therefore, like if there's no default way of using the software, then developing how they test it. Because I know there's a lot of products out there that have a lot of different ways of using it, but there's only one way that's actually tested by the developers. That happens pretty often.
Dave, my friend, you are on mute.
I agree with that. Can you hear me now?
Yay.
All right.
Yeah.
Computers are hard. I agree with the point, but I think it might belong under number 3. As far as the developers test, how do the developers test the software?
Agreed.
And I think that Vicky's suggestion that maybe swapping number 2 and number 3 in the order might make sense, because number 3 kind of leads into answering, is it easy to use securely?
Okay, so how's this? Are there, I'm going to add that right now because I agree that testing is really big. Are there automated tests included in its CI pipeline? It implies that there's a CI pipeline, but you know, if you don't have that, that's a problem too.
It also implies that the tests are worthwhile and not just,
Yeah, that one's harder.
Yeah, I know. We're not going to open that particular can of worms, but
Turtles all the way down.
Yeah,
ooh,
I mean,
yeah,
we could
like
ask.
turtles.
We could ask about coverage. You know, do they have? Is
What's the
there
test coverage look like? Yeah.
And I'm fully aware that you can have good test coverage and lousy tests, but the converse isn't true. If you have bad test coverage, you have bad test coverage. Yeah, let's see here. You know,
That could be
while I
another
add
good
a
blog.
comment. Yeah, I want to add a comment right now and just say, put easy to use after evidence developers work to make it secure. All right, I don't know, reorder things without screwing things up. So, all right. Yeah, and as far as the interface API being secure, maybe talking about parameterized, maybe ask if it has parameterized interface of some kind.
I kind of hope they'd have something published because some people don't like to ask.
Have what's the it you're referring to? I'm sorry.
Me?
Yes.
That some like have it published in their docs somewhere. They have like what they did, or if they have anything at all published in their docs on security, specifically on how you could use it securely. I guess it depends on the project too. But
Right. But I think that's covered in part 2B, determine whether there's guidance on how to use it securely.
Fair.
Because I agree with you about the point. Now, if 2B doesn't cover that, then let's figure out what's missing.
Well, I don't think it would be something on the evaluator perspective because the evaluator can only do so much. So
Right, but they can look and see, hey, is there a doc on how to use this securely, or
correct. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I guess check if the documentation has any guidance on that. But yeah, that's pretty much what we have.
Yeah.
Eric had a suggestion in the chat, and then I think Fuzzy had another good suggestion. Is do we have any way to provide templates along with this? I think wherever possible, we should.
Agreed. I think you have some templates in one of the repositories.
We do.
I think it's the one for like reporting cohesively. I forget.
Yeah, as a CVD guide, we have templates so people can kind of wholesale grab that and use what they need. So if there's opportunity here, if we can make it easy for a developer to copy and paste, that would be beneficial in the end.
Agreed.
And checklists as well. Yep. And so we had talked about potentially flipping the order of 2 and 3. What do we feel about that?
I like that idea. I agree that I think 3 leads into 2.
Okay. All right. Let me.
I think that you'll actually, if you do 3, you probably should have the information to answer 2.
All right. Let me accept that so we have fewer comments and just do the move and. All right. You know what? Let me undo that part. I'm going to
go into edit mode. And
that is exactly what I'm doing. This comes back to the earlier challenge of moving stuff around. All right, done. All right, so can we avoid adding it all? Do they evidence to make it secure? All right, looks like it's plausible. Then, hey, is it easy to use securely? And that interface API may be need to be its own.
Matt, you had a question or comment?
Yeah, I mean, one of the first things, a shortcut we teach people with open source is it coming from a well-governed foundation that has security practices in place that projects must follow, including CI. Does it have CI in place with these testing tools? and things like that. So keep thinking Apache Foundation, other things like that. They have these things in place that gives some level of insurance to start with.
Now, do you think we've spoken to that point, Matt, or do we need to add that in this list? So
I think it's putting it's kind of like scorecard. It's kind of like saying, what's your first indicator? If it's something at Apache Foundation or some other foundation, CNCF, CD Foundation, they have security tags, they have whatever. And if you build your software, you build it the way they tell you to build it, which has scanning in, which has these things. They tell you how to manage your keys, and you have to follow those practices. So those, then you have to have code reviews. You have to do these things, 2I rule, 3I rule, whatever. So if these things are, if a project is there, and it's a approved project, there's a tiered system of governance to verify the security practices are in place.
We have the sustainment in general. I guess we have, is it maintained?
Do we have
So
Vicky.
I'm going to address Mark's suggestion and say a big -1 to the foundation's recommendation. There are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of open source projects, and the vast majority of them are not under a foundation. That doesn't make them insecure, and furthermore, it doesn't make anything under a foundation more secure.
No, I'm saying you
there's also
look to foundation governance. I'm not saying by default that's true. So
in my experience, rank and file users of these things aren't knowledgeable enough to be able to suss out what looks like good governance, what does not. And so I don't think that would be very effective. Also, in my experience, people will conflate projects based upon certain technologies that are under foundations. These are the technologies under the foundation, but the project is not. They will conflate the two. So for instance, any individual node.js module, they may think that, well, because there's Node Foundation, this must naturally be under a foundation. And they're just not savvy enough yet.
I'm just saying that
these.
if you're telling people to do this, to check every project themselves, and they have 1,000 dependencies, and they know that if a project is under a foundation, if the foundation has those practices, NPM is not one of them. So I'm saying that some foundations do provide that set of governance and set of rules before you're actually an approved project. I'm not talking about NPM package or a Python package. That's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but I still fall back to a lot of users they don't have the experience to be able to tell whether that foundation has those rules and whether the project is even under a foundation. I think it just complicates things to a level that this document can't support. David, why are you smiling?
Oh, I work for a foundation, but I'm actually sympathetic to the argument that
Also, don't trust anything from the OpenSSF, So, come on.
Yeah, I mean, I think that foundations very much do have value, but Vicky's absolutely right that a vast number of components aren't from foundations. And as Log4j has shown, it turns out that foundation members are not perfect either. We turn out to be humans also.
I think I view it like kind of the mechanic problems. Like everyone should know how to do their engine, change their oil, do this, change their brake pads, all these things. It's great, but everyone can't be a mechanic on every part and in every car, and not every mechanic's the same. But if you find a good mechanic and you can verify they're a good mechanic, then you use them. People go to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is actually an argument for us to tighten up the audience for this particular document. Is this for people who are the end users of an open source project, or is it for a developer who is bringing in dependencies? Because the first point implies that, whereas this conversation implies the former. And I do need to drop for another call, so I'm gonna also drop that little bomb and then run away.
I'll
Yeah,
add that as
but-
an
but
item for
Vicky-
next time.
Yeah, the intent was for developers. It is hinted at the topic at the very first paragraph. I'll try to clarify that. And if we don't agree, well, we can revisit that next time.
Perfect. Yay.
Sounds
Bye, my
All right,
friends.
good night.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody. Good conversation, good collab.
Welcome
Cheers.
back anytime, Fuzzy.
Yeah, please.
Guys, thank you very much for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
Awesome. Cheers.
Take care, guys.